The July sun hung like molten metal above Brandenburg, turning the air into a trembling sheet of heat. Hauptmann Vera Tierfelder walked across the wide concrete of Rechlin airfield, his shadow stretching long beside him. In front of him stood a fighter plane that looked both foreign and familiar, a captured American P-51 Mustang. It was July 20th, 1944. A date already heavy with tension in Germany. But for Tierfelder, the strangeness before him eclipsed everything else. The aircraft's olive-green paint had faded and peeled. Roughly drawn black crosses covered the spots where white American stars once gleamed proudly. The repaint job was crude, almost insulting. But no paint could hide the essence of this machine. This was a symbol of the changing war. The Germans had spent years believing they led the world in aviation design, yet here stood proof that another nation had caught up, maybe even surpassed them. Tierfelder circled the Mustang slowly, like a scientist studying a newly discovered creature. The fuselage was narrow and elegant, built for speed. The wings were thin, their surface smooth as glass. His fingers traced along the edge, feeling the craftsmanship. He had heard whispers of the Mustang's laminar flow design, an aerodynamic innovation the Germans had never managed to mass produce. It was strange to touch it now, to feel something that looked almost fragile, yet was changing the course of the war. For years, Tierfelder had flown for the Luftwaffe, first intercepting RAF bombers over the Ruhr, then serving as a test pilot in this very facility north of Berlin. He had flown Soviet Yaks that felt heavy and unrefined, British Spitfires that danced through the air but guzzled fuel, and American P-47 Thunderbolts that could dive like a stone but turn like a brick. Each aircraft had its character, yet this Mustang felt different, as though it had been designed not just for war, but for mastery. Reports from the Western Front had grown more alarming every week. Pilots spoke of a new American escort fighter that refused to obey logic. According to every aerodynamic principle known in Germany, a long-range escort fighter should not have been possible. To fly far, one needed fuel. Fuel meant weight, and weight meant sluggish performance. But somehow the Americans had built a machine that could fly from England to Berlin, guard their bombers, fight off interceptors, and return home. The Mustang, Tierfelder realized, was not just an aircraft. It was a message, proof that German engineering no longer held a monopoly on innovation. 2 weeks ago, this particular Mustang had been forced down near Arnhem. Its engine had sputtered after fuel contamination, forcing the pilot to crash land in a field. The landing was rough, but survivable. Wehrmacht troops had arrived before the American could destroy his plane, securing an almost intact specimen. Within hours, the fighter was on a train eastward, bound for Rechlin. Tierfelder's assignment was clear: test it, understand it, and find its weaknesses. Somewhere inside this machine, he hoped was a flaw the Luftwaffe couldn't exploit. He climbed the wing and stepped into the cockpit. Instantly, he noticed how high the seat was positioned, giving the pilot a sweeping field of vision. The canopy was a single bubble of clear plexiglass, offering near-perfect visibility in every direction. He thought of his Messerschmitt Bf 109, a fine machine, but one that trapped its pilot inside a narrow metal coffin with thick framing and deadly blind spots. Here, visibility was total. The instrument panel, labeled in English, was neatly arranged. Small strips of paper with German translations had been taped beside the gauges: fuel mixture, manifold pressure, coolant temperature. Everything was easy to read, easy to reach. American logic, he thought bitterly. Make the airplane fit the pilot, not the pilot fit the airplane. He studied the throttle quadrant on the left. German fighters place it on the right, but the layout made sense once he rested his hand on it. Beneath the throttle were the propeller pitch and mixture controls. The Mustang's propeller operated automatically, adjusting itself for optimum speed without constant manual tweaking. Automation, he murmured. They make war simple. Rechlin's engineers had already recorded the aircraft specifications. The engine was a Packard-built version of the British Rolls-Royce Merlin 61, producing nearly 1,500 horsepower with water methanol boost. Its two-stage supercharger meant it could keep power even at high altitudes where German engines gasped for air. The four-bladed Hamilton Standard propeller measured over 3 meters across. Fully loaded with ammunition and fuel, the plane weighed more than 12,000 pounds, yet pilots reported it remained agile. Its weapons were 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns, 3 in each wing. No cannons, just raw volume of fire. The Americans had bet that 6 fast-firing guns could fill the sky with enough lead to shred any opponent. Reports from Luftwaffe squadrons confirmed that theory too painfully. Thierfelder gave the signal to the ground crew. Mechanics stood by with fire extinguishers, unsure whether this foreign engine would even start on German fuel. Luckily, they had managed to find captured American gasoline, the high-octane type the Merlin demanded. He followed the startup checklist taped inside the cockpit. Mixture, rich. Throttle, cracked open. Magnetos, both. He pressed the starter. The propeller turned once, twice, then roared to life. The sound that filled the airfield was unlike any German engine. The Merlin's voice was smooth and confident, a deep, rolling thunder rather than the metallic snarl of a Daimler-Benz. It was a sound that spoke of precision, of factories untouched by bombers, and resources Germany no longer had. As the engine settled into a steady rhythm, Thierfelder felt a twinge of unease. This machine was not only powerful, it was civilized. Every part of it reflected an industrial system working at full efficiency. The British had designed the Merlin, the Americans had perfected it. Tens of thousands of these engines now powered not only Mustangs, but Spitfires and bombers across the Allied air forces. For the first time in his career, Thierfelder felt that Germany's claim to technological superiority might be nothing more than propaganda. In 1940, German tanks had rolled across Europe like thunder. The Luftwaffe had dominated the skies. Every newspaper and radio broadcast had praised the genius of German engineering. But in 1944, that illusion was cracking. Factories still produced aircraft in record numbers, but the pilots were boys, undertrained, terrified, sent into battle after only a few dozen flight hours. The Allies, meanwhile, sent men into the air with 300 hours of experience, and aircraft that practically flew themselves. Thierfelder taxied the Mustang towards the runway. The ground crew saluted nervously as the foreign engine howled. With a gentle push of the throttle, the plane surged forward. The tail lifted almost instantly. The controls were smooth, astonishingly so. He pulled back, and the fighter leapt into the sky. He climbed higher, the air cooling around him. The altimeter spun. At 15,000 feet, the Mustang still climbed strongly, its supercharger singing. The view through the canopy was breathtaking, clean, unobstructed, free. He banked left and right, testing the roll rate. The response was crisp, almost telepathic. The stick felt alive in his hand. He tried a dive. The aircraft sliced downward with stability that German fighters often lacked. No violent shaking, no compressibility issues. Pulling up again, he marveled at how the Mustang seemed to forgive mistakes, as though it wanted its pilot to succeed. He understood now why German pilots were dying in droves. Against this, even the FW-190 and Bf-110 struggled to keep up. Leveling out, Thierfelder throttled back and stared over the nose. He imagined himself in combat, the 6 Brownings blazing, tracer rounds stitching through the sky. He could almost feel the fear of German bomber crews facing squadrons of these silent predators escorting American bombers across Europe. When he finally returned to base and cut the engine, silence fell heavy over the airfield. The mechanics approached nervously, eyes wide, waiting for his verdict.